Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, 28th January 2023. Mummy and I are here to record our recap video for today's Bhagavad Gita session for our chapter 6 series of classes.
Radhe Radhe.
Coming up on the screen, we're going to have our cover slide. So we in fact finished the last two verses of chapter 6. Chapter 6 verses 46 and 47. First up, of course, was our few quiz questions. Chapter 6 verses 43, 44, and 45. So we encourage you to take a look at those. And now we shall look at chapter 6 verse 46. First have a rendition of the verse, and then we'll explain it briefly.
So chapter 6 verse 46. Tapasvibhyodhiko yogi jnanibhyopi matodhikaha karmibhyaschadhiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna.
So chapter 6 verse 46, the catchphrase here is a question to ponder, which is sequence of superiority. Shri Krishna here talks about 4 categories of people, 1 in one group and 3 in another group, so to say. He talks about yogis and pairwise compares them to say that a yogi is superior to a tapasvi, who is an ascetic, someone who's withdrawn from the world, practices austerities, doesn't seek material pleasures. Likewise, in a pair, a yogi is superior to the jnani. Jnani is a person of learning, someone who enjoys cultivating knowledge. And in addition, a yogi, in the third comparison, a yogi is superior to a karmi. A karmi is a ritualistic performer who's following what the Vedic scriptures prescribe and certainly seeking material opulence and also trying to attain moving to the celestial abodes. So very emphatically, Sri Krishna says a yogi is superior to each of these 3 categories of performers. As a reminder, we mentioned in class that it's important to go back to where a yogi is defined in this chapter. So chapter 6, very first verse, verse 1, the Supreme Lord said, "Those who perform prescribed duties without desiring the results of their actions are actual sannyasis, renunciates." That is from chapter 5, and yogis. So again, yogis were defined here in chapter 6, verse 1. There are people who are performing their actions, performing their duties, but without seeking the results or desiring the results of those actions. Again, going way back even to chapter 2, verse 47, you are entitled to do your duty, but not entitled to the fruits of those actions. Saw it later in chapter 3 and elsewhere also. So coming back here to chapter 6, verse 46, we have that comparison. We talked about what each of these 3 terms is, tapasvi, jnani, and karmi. And then Swamiji also helps give that distinction. Why indeed is a yogi superior to each of these 3 categories, each of these 3 types of people? It's because a tapasvi, a jnani, and a karmi are still at the bodily, the platform of existence. But it's the yogi who is seeking that connection with God and is truly practicing in a spiritual sense. Therefore, again, Sri Krishna states that a yogi is superior to each of those, tapasvi, jnani, and karmi. When we talk about the next verse, additional clarification or terms used with some of these same words will help make the connection clearer because the wording is very precise in Sri Krishna's own language. Chapter 6, verse 47. Let's hear that.
Yoginam api sarvesham madgatenantaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yukta tamo mataha.
So chapter 6, verse 47 has the catchphrase here as supreme service. Supreme, again, building off from chapter 6, verse 46. A yogi we saw was superior to a tapasvi, a jnani, and a karmi. Here now, Sri Krishna looks only at that category of all yogis, within which also there are different groupings. And Sri Krishna says that of all the yogis, the ones whose minds are always absorbed in him, in Sri Krishna, and who practice devotion to him with great faith, they are the highest yogis. They are the dearest to Sri Krishna. So let's look at this verse here, chapter 6, verse 47. And again, in the commentary, we'll shortly see that there is the element of seva and service. Therefore, the catchphrase was supreme service. Again, Sri Krishna now puts this debate to rest, as Swamiji describes. So you look at now just yogis, all yogis, that means those who are performing duties but are not seeking or desiring the results of their actions. Within them, there are groupings such as karma yogis, certainly must have been on everyone's mind. There are ashtang yogis practicing, the eightfold limbs of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. There are hatha yogis, much more towards exercise, other disciplines. All that is part of being a yogi, but the highest of all, those are bhakti yogis, even more than jnana yogis, karma yogis, ashtanga yogis, hatha yogis. So it is those who have that great faith in Sri Krishna, in the Supreme, and they practice devotion. They go about doing their duties. They do not seek the results or the fruits of their actions. And also simultaneously, their minds are always absorbed in Sri Krishna. Those are known as bhakti yogis, and they are the highest of all in Sri Krishna's words. And, Swamiji helps us understand through the commentary that it is this, divine love, that highest power of God to be able to have devotion towards God. And a lot of that is going to stem from an element of faith, Shraddha, as Mummy often says and reminds us about since chapter 4 or before, and having, again, that prem, that divine love, but also this element of surrender and humility. Whatever happens is the will of God, but it is his prasadam. It is the grace of God. So with that, and with a couple of shlokas Swamiji presents from the Bhagavatam, really gives us that stress on appreciating that we are in our position, natural position in the soul state as, eternal servants of God. And we want to be devotees of God. We want to show that love and that seva and service to all such devotees. And that is indeed why Sri Krishna says that bhakti yogis are the highest of all. The element of seva, or bhajate Swamiji says has the root word bhaj. And again, that is to do with not just worship, but that element of seva. Truly, truly important. And so again, a distinction now between bhakti yogis and the other yogis mentioned is that, yes, indeed, all of them have connected with God, but there is an incomplete realization for all the others versus bhakti yogis. So Swamiji says, it is to understand that we are the eternal servants of God. And indeed, this will come up in extensive detail in chapter 12, dedicated to Bhakti Yoga. And then later on, Swamiji gives a preview, chapter 18, verse 55. We'll also see that true personality of God, again, through the element of Bhakti Yoga. So that's the essence here for this last verse of chapter 6. Chapter 6, verse 47. Two important verses showing the comparison of a yogi with certain categories of people at the bodily platform. So that was in chapter 6, verse 46. And now chapter 6, 47, verse 47, the highest yogis of all. Mami, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Gagan. And yes, very important verses, and Krishna has given the verdict that bhakti yogis are the best ones, the superior ones, then compared to ascetics and jnanis. So in that light, let's see one word from chapter 6, verse 46, that is adhikaha, adhikaha. That means superior. And in the translation of this verse, this word has been used 3 times. So, but natural, there is a question, who is better, who is superior? And in the next verse, Krishna gives that answer that Bhakti Yogi is the best one. So in from verse 47, let's look at the word Shraddhavan. Shraddhavan means with great faith. So now this is the one, because see, all these categories, people are doing lots of penance, they are giving up material desires, they are accumulating a lot of knowledge, wisdom, everything, trying to connect mind with God, no doubt. The only difference is that in Bhakti Yogis, they have great, great faith. Number one, they worship God, yes, but they worship with the attitude of serving Lord. That is called the real loving devotion. And that is why Krishna has declared here that they are the best yogis, because along with their mind always being absorbed in Krishna, they engage in devotion with great faith, and they are established in the natural position of the soul as the servant of God. So, satsang, seva, sadhana, seva comes on top. So, those yogis who are attaching their mind with God and not asking anything for material pleasure, just want to have God realization by serving God with loads of loving devotion. They are the best yogis, and they reach God realization in this birth itself. That is what Krishna is saying. So let's continue to do bhakti with all our heart and mind in God, attached with God. Hope that helps to understand it further. Yes?
Yes, thank you so much, Mummy. So indeed, a good conclusion to chapter 6. As we mentioned, these last two verses, very, very essential, very important. And as always, just to make another connection, as you're aware, you can look at the description for this video and access our slides through the class page on the JKYog community portal. Lots of slides and helpful references every week that are provided. One of the video links that is going to be in the slides this time is to help illustrate this thing here, where Swamiji has said that God becomes enslaved by the love of his devotees. So we do encourage you to take a look at one of those video links that is going to be in the slides that are presented for this week. Check it out. There's a question or two perhaps towards the end of the video. Try it. And again, just to help reinforce your understanding. With that, we of course look forward to seeing you next time. So on Thursday, 2nd February 2023, we'll see you for our continuing Bhagavad Gita recitation series for chapter 2. And then next Saturday, 4th February 2023, we of course shall see you for this next class of Bhagavad Gita study for chapter 6. As a reminder, we'll post this as well. But again, we'll have a short quiz like we usually do, which is to cover these two verses today, chapter 6, verses 46 and 47. We'll read through a quick summary, of course, of the entire chapter, and then we'll have a much larger quiz, one of two, which is to help everybody reinforce concepts from chapter 6. So that quiz part 1 is going to cover chapter 6, verses 1 through 23. So half the chapter, verses 1 through 23. Please do study hard. Take a look at all the slides, all the previous quiz questions and older material. Everything is on the community portal for this class series. Please let us know if you have questions. But regardless, we shall see you next time, hopefully ready for all those questions. Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.